Hello. Oh, I actually did that on Omar, but you're welcome to come up too, Omar. Why not? Hear from Daisy. Why not? She's just joined. And Pony. I'm just going to invite loads of people up. Why that? Hey, Daisy, how are you? Hey, Pony. Good to see you.
How are we doing? Just joined in. I'm on stage already.
Nice. Welcome. 36. Oh, sorry, 38
I've
of
just
us
thrown my
already in
tea
here.
down to join you.
Oh no.
I've done
When you
exactly
say
the
tea,
same.
do you mean your
Food
dinner?
inhaled.
Right.
Yeah, yes, I've just
Well,
thrown it
take
down.
your
I've nearly
time.
choked myself.
Jesus, don't do that. Um, yeah, today we're going to talk about a few things. Uh, Yes, AI is probably going to be the main topic of conversation. I'm expecting a lot of, uh, yeah, on AI. There's going to be a lot of people who feel certain ways about it for sure. So we get into that. A couple things. First of all, I've been at Gamescom all week. That's been lots of fun. Um, yeah, basically gate crashed a bunch of different XR meet. Um, I'm just going to try and turn the TV off, but I can't find the remote, so I'm just going to leave it on. Um, yeah, basically, not as much of a VR audience at Gamescom this year than there has been in previous years, but uh, Meta had an after party event that they usually do, which was one of the parties that I gate crashed. Uh, um, there was unfortunately some people dealing with problems with their equipment being stolen, which was really unfortunate. I don't know if anybody's seen the news around that. That seems to have been the biggest sort of controversy slash drama at Gamescom this year. Um, yeah, for me, honestly, it was mostly a geek out session, getting to see some of the latest and greatest in game. Uh, Definitely more game developers, major game developers, right? I didn't see Blizzard or EA or Nintendo or any of those big, which I think is a good thing, right? But it's also kind of indicative of it right now in that AAA are suffering and indies are kind of ruling the world in that sense. So, yeah, it was still fun. Cologne is a great place in Germany, very free thinking part of Germany. Highly recommend it. Lots of historical stuff, loads of tours. We got some time to get a view at the city and get to look at everything too. Um, yeah, so that was fun. That was a lot of fun. Something I do want to point out to you guys before we get started as well. There's two new events that have been added in uh, here on Discord. One is about hosting events. So an event about hosting events. It's a little bit meta. But the other one is about uh, building worlds, right? Building worlds and event hosts assemble hosting events. I'm just going to share the links for each of them in the chat. There's the SDK. SDK meetup was actually the name of the event when it ran in Altspace. What that meetup is generally just a way to catch up with world builders, right? And to catch up with some of the team, to see what the latest updates are in the SDK, to work on some stuff together. That event is going to be run by somebody who I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with. He usually does a weekly event called, be moving that over to the SDK meetup and running that here in Discord on a live stage, like this event is currently. So please, click the interested button and come and see that first event next week, next Saturday, and learn about how to build worlds. Aside from that, the event hosts Assemble event is going to be run by Discord Kitty. Discord Kitty has been maintaining the events on the very same using now for years at this point, and will have the most intimate knowledge of how to set up and how to run your event. We have most of the in place now to be able to configure and set up all of your events, right? So the reason that I am running these events now in Discord is really that I want to try acclimated to how to set up this kind of stuff. Really, I want to try and get as many people excited and interested in running events and creating worlds in advance of the wider release of AltspaceVR, right? And right now, God, we're about 4 weeks out from that. So, so really, those events are just to help lead lineups, worlds for the general launch of AltSpace in 4 or 5 weeks, which is going to be a great opportunity for us to combine that launch announcement with the announcement of your events and all of your worlds, right? And try and put as much of a spotlight onto them. I'm looking for people who are interested in trying to align with that launch into early access in about 4. I see Very Ambitious has posted a link to Vanquisher's 101 guide building worlds. That's a great video. He's only just posted time and energy into that, so please take a look if that's something you're interested in, and if you prefer to be able to dig through that. If you need to find it again, it's in the beta release channel if it gets lost in the chat. So feel free to take a look at the beta release channel. In there you'll also find links to the documentation, links to how you can actually download the current beta and use it. Up here with down of some of the features that have just rolled out onto the website. Let me just share. You can all see the new website, right? So you may have seen the everything page. Everything is designed kind of a global top page for discovery, which will be pretty much groups, worlds, and events, and even people showcased at the very. It kind of kicks off with a staff picks section here at the very top, right? This is the place where my own staff have the ability to highlight specific things that we think are great. It will be something that we will choose, not something that you can request, right? It's important in order for us to pick, it has to be our own choice. But in terms of community picks, as you can see, I think it's worth saying we might limit the staff pick items in this list maybe we'll expand more to groups and events, but to start with, I want to try and keep us can above the fold here for community because I want to try and give those as much priority here at the top of this screen as I pop. So within this, if you think of staff picks as kind of like a category, community picks as a category, just so that this is obvious to everybody. Under that category, you've got worlds, you've got groups, and also you'll have events under here too. And then the rest of these sections with the white title, like social, here, again, another category, and worlds, groups, and eventually events. Games categories, music categories, art. There's a bunch. Go through all of them. Every single world, group, and event is able to select from those categories whenever you edit your group or event or world. Sorry, excuse me. I've already got a bunch of new categories in the works. Daisy's been sending me some suggestions in DMs, and those categories. If you have been struggling with which categories to use, don't worry, there's more options coming. So hang tight, and we will hopefully get that sorted fairly quickly. There's quite a lot here in terms of discovery features, the category, the community picks. Realistically, we had about this at the last event last week, and I of that feature have that built into. But if we go on a little further here, let's say if we look at groups individually, and there's a group. There's a number of things here I'd love to point out. You've got sorting, which is going to sort by new if you want to see the latest groups. Or eventually, once we've got this fully wired up, you'll be able to see which attendance and time spent. Those are particularly derived from the worlds and events, the worlds that the group has attached to it. God, I realize I'm talking about exactly sure if everybody understands. Is there anybody here who doesn't get what a group is versus a world versus an event in the chat? Please let me know, and I can dig into that more. I'll keep an eye on the chat there over the next few minutes, and if anybody says they've got a problem, otherwise I'll just assume we all get what groups, worlds, and events are. Groups are kind of the top level, right? And then you can have events and worlds connected to those, but you can also just have worlds out on their own as as you can see, categories. Here's the full list that we've got right now. That later next week. And you can also just see specifically staff picks or community picks independently as well, right? Or both community. So stay or some more curation on those both of those fronts. One by the community and one by my. Great solid foundation of discovery features that make it easier for you to find stuff. And it's not just the same 10 or 20 things at the top of the list all the time, right? That there's quick and easy ways to see what are the new things that have been created. And yeah, be able to see a lot of the up and coming content as well, and turn that into the hot and top content, right? It has to kind of come from somewhere. So that is what constitutes effectively the melting pot of discovery when it comes to all of those parts, right? Um, some of you may have noticed that there's been some updates to this screen under people. Previously, it had mentioned points which in some cases were up into the millions. That was incorrect, and that was the wrong display. It's now been fixed. So now you can actually see people's XP, which Bob being the highest one. I don't know why his bio says gorilla tagline. That's interesting. Or his tagline, sorry, says gorilla. But you can see he's got 14,000 XP and he's level 47, right? And I think that's important to understand because we talked about people reaching level 50 in order to be able to uh, have a custom avatar. There's a number of other people here on the list. You can see loads of people have high levels. I'll call out Kevin Warhaft, sitting at level 30 currently, with 6,493 XP. Doing great. Feel free to check this list and see where you line up on it. Um, yeah, I think it's important to note at this stage, we're going to be experimenting with lots of different things to allow people to uh, yeah, to earn XP, right? And it's going to be kind of a balance, right? We want to be able to make it so that those who contribute more in the platform and become part of the community will be rewarded more, right? So those who have, who attend a lot of things, who engage in building worlds, in running events, or helping out when it comes to running events, there'll be a lot of ways for you to be able to earn more XP by doing those things, right? So stay tuned for some more information on that. Let's see. Under the menu here, really, you'll see that most of these screens will allow you to create a world or to create an event. Actually, creating an event is under the umbrella of a group because events will only exist under groups, right? You have to have But previously, that was only something that our staff could do. Now anybody can do that. So please jump in and reserve your custom names for your worlds. Those will be the URL of your world that people can use to visit it, but it will also constitute kind of like a world code that when people type that in inside AltSpace, they'll just and they'll be able to find your world, right? So it actually serves as another great discovery mechanism for people to be able to find your world. And also, yeah, we might expand Discover in the future to make it so you can make worlds that are unlisted yet can be publicly accessed, so that you have a comes in, right? So I can appreciate that there might be a good reason to have that option in future. Something we're also going to be introducing at some point in the coming week is going to be unique user. So Daisy, you mentioned that you were searching for yourself and you found lots of people. Well, yeah, some others have mentioned that to me too. Uh, is that we've already got 4.5 million users because yeah, we have an existing user base here at SideQuest. Many of those users are not active anymore, but that's how many people have signed up to SideQuest over the last nearly 8 years. Um, so that's the reason why you're finding so many, right? Is because those numbers are so high that the chances of somebody else having a name similar to yours as a result, right? Unique usernames should make that easier because you'll be able to share your username with somebody and they'll be able to find you with your, direct username instead of having to search for you. So that's something that we're going to have. I think the things we can explore in future, if that still proves to be a problem, right? We can maybe see if there's ways we can filter out users that haven't with AltSpace yet and only show users who have. We just need to figure out how that's going to affect being able to find people, whether that becomes more cumbersome or not, depending on how we approach that, right? But I think it's important to note there's a massive advantage to having all of those existing users be able to access AltSpace on day one without having to create an account. Not only that, but it involves way less overhead for us at SideQuest to have to maintain and all of the nuances that go with that rather than having to segment and create separate user bases. So yeah, when you sign up, it's as if you're obviously signing up to AltSpace Direct. We've designed it that way. Things aren't confusing. But some of you may notice that the emails you'll receive, for instance, are coming from SideQuest email addresses, even though they say "Welcome to AltSpace." It is actually coming, and yeah, you sign in using your SideQuest account, right? So I think that is the right way for us to do this. We just need to figure out how we can make it easier for people to find each other when it matters. Otherwise, gives us a great leg up in terms of, kind of like the platforms. Meta, they don't need people to sign up because they already have an account on Meta. Steam, they don't need people to sign up because they already have an account. So that gives us the benefit of being able to make onboarding a whole lot easier for potentially 4.5 million people who could come and use the platform. Yeah, so that's that. I think, yeah, it's probably a good time to just straight into our main topic, really, which is AI, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Um, so I'm going to shut up because I've been talking for 30 straight minutes. I always do that. And I'm going to maybe see who else wants to come in and kick us off with their thoughts on AI in general. and I'm going to invite some other people up to speak as well. But I don't know. Moonhunter, Daisy, Pony, you guys got thoughts on AI? Any of you want to jump in?
Yeah, I
I
guess
think
I have a
AI has its.
question.
Sorry, I'll let Moonhunter
No,
carry
you
on.
want me to go? Yeah. Thank you. So I guess I have a question
Okay.
around the alt space, sort of like maybe policies when it comes to leveraging generative AI with uploading and like distribution of those assets. Is there is there any sort of policy that's going to be in place to prevent it, or is it going to be allowed and then sort of like monitored later down the road? Or
Sure. Yeah, that's a good
yeah.
question. Yeah, I think what's important to note here before I answer two different there's two different there's two different ways to talk about AI when we talk about alt space. There's going to be whether we at the platform level leverage AI in all sorts of ways to build the core platform of alt space. And then there's whether creators on the platform leverage AI to their own worlds, avatars, whatever. There's obviously a plethora of additional kind of assets and metadata and so forth you can generate with AI that can be everything from stories and dialogue to audio, sound effects to just images, textures, potentially videos, all sorts of things. Um, so at the platform level, we approach that we would like to engage directly with artists, and we using AI for anything that lands in the final product. Internally, we may conceptualize things on occasion with AI. We may illustrate things whenever we're trying to convey points to each other to communicate better. Going to be, built by and carry all of the blood, sweat, and tears that comes from humans actually creating stuff. When it comes to creators and how they build, that is something that we will not prevent in any way people from using tools that they want to use. So I think that's kind of our stance on it, right? So we're kind of taking, yeah, um,
Yeah, and I think that's the stance that I was hoping to hear, which is
yeah,
like I use AI in my workflows for concept and then sometimes to put together a foundation that then needs to be polished quite heavily. And
yeah,
so the end result is a tremendous amount of human intervention, but it often starts with AI and iterating and brainstorming. And okay. So, yeah, I was just curious because I know Banter had that feature and they were open to leveraging AI at the creator level. And I just wanted if Altspace was going to share that sort of creative freedom, allowing us to leverage these tools and then import them.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think it's what's interesting is that, like when it comes to games and even platforms, right? There's a lot of conflict uh, when it comes to the use of AI. And yeah, I mean, even before this stage, right, we kind of got into it a little bit and we were talking about some stuff and we were talking about ethics. And um, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to consider there. And I think, I mean, what we want to be able to do really is capture what made Altspace great nearly a decade ago. And that was a time when AI didn't exist, and that's why we're engaging directly with the original the original artists, the original sound designers, capture what made that great back in the day. And I think I think what's important really here as a platform is that we try to be as open and as accessible to the largest group of people that we can. And I think for us, it's important that we essentially remain diplomatic and not necessarily take a stance on AI either way, right? So I think for us, it's important that we kind of stay in a position where we're not endorsing AI, we're not condemning it either. Um, and in that way, there's different categories of creators that we're not alienating by doing so, right? And I think what's like right now when it comes to creation pipelines, workflows, tools, uh, if one was to say I'm going to not use AI today, that's actually quite a difficult thing because all the major design tools, the game engines, the 3D tools, everything has got AI integrated across the board right now. So you're kind of limiting what you can and can't do considerably by taking a stance that you're definitely not going to use AI. And I think been such a dramatic shift in how software is presented when it comes to using AI that even like large platforms like Steam originally they blocked AI generated content and then they changed their policy to include labels on what is or isn't AI generated. My assumption is that in the future they will have to backpedal further because at a certain point everything that's on Steam will involve AI of some form or another. And even if it's, code assisting tools like Copilot or complete CLIs like Codex and Claude, down to, generating conception art, generating trailers and stuff like that, generating dialogue and text, and where a lot of that stuff ends up in your pipeline is going to evolve, and it's very likely that at a certain point, every single game will involve some form of AI, and that won't be even down to choice, right? Um, but uh, as a platform, we do have the choice, and I think for us, it's important to demonstrate to our creators that we value their effort. So we want to ensure that, that we take a position, at least with what we create, that we're supporting humans. Um, but that won't necessarily mean that we will what creators can do, because I think it's going to be up to the creator to decide, just like it's up to us to make that choice for ourselves. It's up to each that choice for themselves, and to take take the risks and the ethical considerations into account when they do that.
Yeah, and the reason question is, on the one hand, we do have seem to be somewhat up in the air because, as you probably know, like the math, we were talking about this earlier, but the math doesn't really math in terms
Yes.
of how much AI is costing the companies in order for us to even leverage it in the first place, how many data centers they're going to need to build, what's going to happen to those buildings when AI becomes cheaper and they don't need
to see what happens when the light goes away.
But the reason why I still
We have to visit all the places we visited the last
why I
year or
prefer
so.
your
That's
stance
right.
on
Yep.
it and
Because they all
the
look different.
stance that you're going to allow creators to take is that
Hello, guys.
AI has really
Hey,
Hi,
fellas.
empowered
Harman.
Welcome
people
back
to do
from
things that
the
they've
almost
never been able to
dead.
do before.
Yes, thank you very much.
Using our
Hi,
head for so
Ninja,
many years.
Loki.
What's going on?
And I know from personal experience in VR, a lot of the social space really struggle to find the time to build things that they have in their mind, and AI is just speeding up the process, and it brings them. And I've heard these words from other people. It's like a second lease on life, where they feel like they're able to contribute to something bigger than themselves. And that's why I'm a fan of it. It's empowering a lot of people that didn't have power before to do the things that they set their mind out to do.
I think you're absolutely right. The pool of creators has grown and will continue to grow exponentially because there's no longer this moat around, this uphill climb of having to understand the technical knowledge. I completely agree. I think it's exactly as you said. It's empowered people, and it's going to increase that quality bar, right? For people who aren't as familiar with the technology, they'll be able to create better content. Then even those who are, who do have that capability and that experience, for those people too, because it makes it easier to potentially work faster, but also to achieve, even loftier goals there when it comes to what it is that you create, right? The bar is shifting. There's no doubt about that. It is, and it's about, it's about how can you best take advantage of that in order to, to try and improve your ability to express yourself, right? But I mean, I'd love to hear from.
Big relief to hear you say that you're putting so much value on the world builders, and because most of us have spent years learning how to do this, but it's great that more people are going to be helped to realize their ideas as well. I mean, for myself personally, I'm looking forward to perhaps being able to use it to create a texture that I once would spend a whole day looking for to get the right one. So that'll be fun. But yeah, not to create whole worlds with them, because then it just goes mad, I suppose. I mean, I wouldn't know what was possible, but I would imagine that, I hear stories of people being able to, the ones that know how to word the prompts can pretty much do really amazing things. And yeah, it's nice to know that you're going to just keep a lid on that, and prioritize the world builders who are putting the effort in.
Yeah, no, I
I don't
appreciate
really
that.
know
Thank you.
enough about it to comment further.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It is a complicated topic, and it's far-reaching too, right? There's so many different things that AI can be used for, and I think most people don't fully even understand the scope of how many different things that you can use it for. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think for us, there's a way to use AI in a way that doesn't hurt people, and that's what I'm excited about exploring. And and then I think that there's ways to uh, there's ways to enable the community and allow people to kind of use it themselves as well. Pony, you were gonna say something before. You want to
Yeah, I
dive
was
in?
gonna.
Give us your
Yeah, I
two
was.
cents.
I was actually going to say along the same lines as Daisy that I started using AI to help me find my materials, more my textures for my materials, because at one point I'd happily spend hours and create them on GIMP and draw them all out, but the amount of time it saves me in texturing my materials and doing all that kind of artwork, it makes building so much easier, so much quicker. I mean, don't get me wrong, I enjoy drawing, I enjoy painting, but I can cut weeks, months off my build times. So that's what I use AI for. That was bad. What I was going to say.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, yeah, especially if there's an area that you're, I mean, it's such a broad skill set, really, isn't it? In terms of all the different parts that are required, everything from modeling, texturing, lighting, rigging, character modeling as well, all of the nuances that come with that, right? There is quite a lot to it, and if there's ways to allow you to focus on the areas that that you prefer and allow you to simplify the other areas, then that sounds reasonable to me. Um, yeah, I mean, one thing that we haven't really talked about yet is, well, actually, it was mentioned in the chat, right? Barry mentioned, are we always going to have human moderators? And yeah, I mean, I'm all for that. I have a team of moderators. I have a wider set of community moderators. I've got community volunteers that help in other ways as well. And I think I stand behind all of each and every one of those people when it comes to their ability to do their job and to do it well. And we're going to have people on the platform, right, who will be there to just offer support and keep an eye on things and deal with people who are yeah, trying to make the experience bad, um and do it in a way where you can use your own kind of know-how and use your own judgment call to make a decision as to what to do. And those situations are often very nuanced and can be very difficult for an AI to understand, even as it is. um but that's not to say that I would rule out the ability for people to be able to experiment with bringing AI agents, let's say, into virtual worlds for people to be able to interact with. In fact, something I've been working on for the last week or so, I don't know anybody who understands what an MCP is. Um, yeah, maybe I'll briefly explain. MCP is a Model Context Protocol. It is a new protocol that allows AIs to be able to interact with software, right? Or APIs, application interfaces. It basically gives the AI a set of tools that it can use to do certain things. A lot of software now comes with these MCPs built in, which allows AI to control the software, gives the AI a set of tools to be able to interact directly with the software. Yeah, some of you guys have used MCPs. No, M as in Mike, Dow. But it's funny you say NPC, because uh, that's kind of the point I'm getting to. Um, there is a CreatorWorks MCP created by Bob, one of the guys on my team, that basically allows you to control Unity, has some built-in knowledge about how our scripting system works here in AltSpace, and can actually write visual script code for you, as well as understanding a lot of the other stuff that's in there. Some of you in the chat have pointed out there's MCPs also that official ones that come from Unity. There's ones for Blender. There's all sorts of ones already available that do lots of different things. Over the last week or so, I've been working on an MCP that will be built into AltSpace itself. And what that will do is it will allow AI agents to control the AltSpace client. What they'll be able to do with the client is basically control it like we do as humans. So they'll be able to move the character around. They'll be able to move forwards, backwards, left, right. They'll be able to rotate. They'll be able to jump. They'll be able to teleport. Uh, they'll be able to see. They'll actually be able to see what we see when we look at the client. They'll be able to speak. They'll be able to hear. Uh, so basically, in essence, they'll have full control over the client. The client itself will become a remotely controllable piece of software that an AI agent can tap into. And it should work with anything that supports MCP, which is pretty much every type of AI that's out there. Let's see. So the point of this really is that it is a control interface, right? So it's the ability for the client to be automated and controlled. It may also be wrapped up in the form of a CLI, right, which is a command line interface, which will, effectively allow us to automate the client. Now, there's loads of things that we can use this for. We can use it to be able to test stuff. So we can start to reduce the amount of times that we break things whenever we do updates. We can use it to be able to build out bots, right? Kind of like we have here on Discord, where you can have bots that automate certain tasks or provide certain features and services and functionality to the community, right? One thing that people always had in Altspace back in the day was that they would use an avatar and a client to be able to like broadcast music to a group of people, right? They would do some live music or whatever it is, and they would have a specific client, a specific avatar somewhere in the space designed for this, right? And this is going to effectively facilitate that as well. To your point, Barry, so whether or not you're going to be able to interact with AI agents is going to be up to you. We will mark them distinctly as bots that you'll be able to identify the difference between a bot and a human person. You'll be able to block them exactly like you do with normal people. So if you don't want to interact with them at all, you've got plenty of choice there in terms of not letting them see or hear you or see or hear them. And of course, you can always, if it's things you don't want to interact with, you can always go to different worlds. Whether you can ban those AI bots from entering your worlds, I mean, possibly that's something we could introduce. Maybe we could make it so that somebody can only bring an AI bot into their own worlds. Honestly, I would love to understand as best I can, what people's reaction are going to be to these kinds of things, um, and how people are going to use them. Really, I think it would be great to try and get a sense of that. Because I think that there's a lot of great use cases for these sorts of things, right? If it comes to helping with onboarding or okay, so Barry, I'm going to say this once, if I can. Can you please keep it clean? We had a slight discussion before this, and I feel like you got to a point of getting quite wound up about the conversation. Please keep it clean. I'm going to say that once. But yeah, so I understand, Barry, that you're frustrated, right? But we're trying to have an open conversation here, and at the minimum, I'm going to need you to not use language like that in the chat, so that we can continue to have an open conversation about this kind of stuff, right? But yeah, in essence, people could use these to be able to provide, onboarding and customer service for their worlds. They could use them to provide role playing in the form of NPCs. Somebody mentioned that in the chat a while ago. And I think that there's a lot of value there, right? Realistically, this is about trying to create an interface, a collection of tools, basically making it possible to control the client in an automatic way, a way that is compatible with most AIs, but can also be used by non-AI, right? I think that's mainly the point I'm trying to get to. So yeah, bots is probably a better thing to describe these as, because inherently it doesn't include any AI capability. It's more like a bot interface that AI can talk to. So yeah, this is going to be something that will be available. We'll continue to evolve it, I guess, as time goes on. We'll see how people use it, how they want to use it, right? It's going to be an experiment to some degree, right? So, yeah, maybe I'll stop there and see. Maybe Designer Girl. I know I asked you up a while ago. I know you've got some interest in this topic. Do you want to
Yeah.
give us your thoughts?
Right. Well, I'm quite an interesting middle ground here because originally I was completely anti-AI at all because I'm a creator and I build everything from the ground up myself, and I felt a little bit threatened by it. But I've now seen both sides of the AI argument, and now I see why it's important to integrate it without taking anything away from your actual creativity, more like just enhancing it. Like Moonhunter said, I've used it for brainstorming, concepts, code, texture generation. And I think that's the right stance to let people choose whether they want to use it or not. But you see, if designers can use AI for code, then I kind of have felt that, well, maybe coders should be allowed to use AI for models and things they struggle with. It just gives us a lot more power without taking any of our creativity away. That's kind of my stance on it because I'm open to new ideas and everything. But I understand that when you were talking about the bots, people obviously a little bit threatened by them, but being able to block them or ban them, but good uses obviously of onboarding and that. But I'm more interested personally in the experimental side of technology, what it could do. But there's my thoughts. I agree with both sides, but I think choice is very important.
I have a question about the bots.
Go ahead.
Based on something that Winberry was talking, you kind of made a good point. But I don't even know if they would have this capability. But would bots have the ability to traverse worlds? So could a bot travel to my world even though I don't want bots in my world? Like, could that
It's a good
happen?
question. I
Yeah.
mean, honestly, it depends on what we kind of allow them to. Right now, potentially, whether we introduce like a blanket method to prevent that could be something that we could implement. We've already got the option to disable the capability of guests to be able to join your world. So we could implement a similar thing that would prevent bots from being able to join your world. Or, you could decide yourself whether you want bots or you only want your bots, or under the group umbrella, it's bots that the group has got allowed and are connected, or are members, or are even moderators of the group, right? So there could be kind of a spectrum of access control there to your worlds, for instance, that you could decide. And honestly, maybe that already exists, right? In terms of what we've got in terms of world access, right? If your world is limited to just just group members, for instance, and bots have been banned from the group, then in that case they can't enter your world. Random bots, shouldn't then be able to enter your world. I mean, I think realistically, it's more about trying to enable access to a new technology and experimentation with that technology, whilst also trying to limit people's ability to use that technology for any kind of abuse, right? So
Mhm.
I think as long as we can figure that
Yeah.
part out, that's the important thing.
Yeah, I just think bots being able to traverse worlds would be easy to abuse, as far
Yeah.
as if there were no settings of like block these bots. I could see, even though that if you went the route of actually blocking bots from going from world to world, server to server, then maybe there's like an integration feature where you can put your bot on a marketplace and then people can choose to get that bot inside their world, similar to how you might order a kit.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, honestly, yes. It's hard to know exactly how that's going to shape up at this stage, but I can absolutely see that being a thing. I mean, I think looking at how bots are used on Discord is a great example, right? And Shoseki pointed it out in the chat. I'm going to invite Shoseki up, see if he wants to come up and talk.
Hey.
And he does. Great. Good to see you. I think that's a good model, right? That, I think being able to travel from one world to another could be a useful feature for a bot. Like if somebody wants a bot to be able to showcase a series of worlds, right? That could be useful. So I think that there's probably merit to both sides, that maybe on an individual world basis or on an individual group basis, you can tick a box to say, I don't want bots. But that somebody else with their own group and their own set of worlds can allow bots to freely move around those worlds. And even within that, then maybe it's only their bots that are allowed to move around within those worlds. Or if they decide to let it be a free for all, then it can be any bots that could potentially, right? So I think the ability for a bot to have the option to attempt to join a world is useful, and whether that is granted for them to join that world is the other side of it, right? And I think as long as we kind of cover both of those aspects, then it's going to be pretty good. And I like what you're saying, about having like a bot marketplace and people being able to pull those bots in, right? That's very much kind of like how Discord works. And there's kind of a multi-tenanted layer to Discord bots where they maintain connections to massive servers all at once and deal with huge volumes of data. And they have a whole back-end infrastructure of scaling and sharding as bots become exposed to larger and larger numbers of servers and members. And, the same thing would probably need to apply here, that if we have bots, they need that concurrency situation where new instances of the bots can spawn into new communities and serve, an isolated aspect of functionality there. But look, I'll tell you what, here's something that somebody has mentioned, which is like whether or not bots should be used for moderation. Now, I don't know about any of you guys, but I've run events in the past. And sometimes it can be really tricky to moderate the event as well as present at the event, and to manage multiple instances at an event to know what's going on. Sometimes it takes a whole team of people. And the problem with that is that not every event host has the ability to recruit an entire team of people to help them with the running of that event. So what ends up happening is it's just a bit of a free for all, and they don't have the ability to properly moderate the event, and therefore they just hope that something bad doesn't happen. And yeah, they do their best, right, to present and moderate at the same time. And I think that in some cases it could be useful to just have a bot in the room that you could effectively talk to as if it's another human and tell it to take certain actions on your behalf, right? A bot that you can trust. Like moderation bots are quite common on Discord to examine that parallel again. And I think it's a great use case, is that you can try to solve some of the complex problems that come with moderation in environments by having this extensible option to create a bot that's automated, that can be controlled by software or can be controlled by AI, and can lend a helping hand when it comes to trying to solve some of the more complex problems around moderation, right? And that's about managing a community or a group or attendees at an event as much as it is about taking kind of enforcement action, right? It can be as much about helping inform and educate people about what the event is and what the purpose of it is, welcoming people to an event, maybe helping to highlight people, maybe mirroring people, megaphoning people, or maybe kicking and banning people from the event as well, right? So there could be a way to supplement that and to give people more confidence that an event is going to run as smoothly as it can if they have this layer of automation that can help. And honestly, it's something that's super useful. but also it just depends, right? If this is your group, your world, your event, and you want to be able to run your own bots in it to make your life easier, then why not, right? I think that could be something good. Anyway, I pulled you in, Shoseki, and yeah, I don't know if you wanted to jump in with any thoughts.
I mean, I was going to suggest, first of all, sort of a clear separation between bots and AI for starters, because AI isn't just this one fits all type thing. Like, for example, ChatGPT, you're interacting with it in text, but it's firing off lots of models in the background. It's generating images. It's generating, there's a whole complicated conversation there. But bots are used in lots of systems already and have been before the AI craze. So, for example, if we compare to something like Twitch, you had live chat, you had moderators, and you would write regular expressions in order to be able to filter out various types of like hate speech and spamming and things like this. And obviously your moderators would sometimes be paid, sometimes not be, but the point was they were there to try and improve the quality of the discourse. Perhaps there were certain terms that you didn't want to have endlessly spamming. Maybe you did want links, sometimes you didn't want links, sometimes you wanted clips, sometimes you wanted to elevate certain users. Bots also end up being a form of content unto themselves. Anyway, I'm not, once again, not talking about AI, I'm talking about sometimes, I'd have a points-based system, so therefore people can trigger emojis, or they can trigger this, or they can trigger that, they trigger events in the game, in the stream, etc. So if we look at other platforms like Twitch, I think in terms of bots, and once again go back to Discord, there's lots of things that people use this stuff, and you're entirely free to decide whether or not you want to enable and configure a bot specifically for your world. In some respects, that's more like world building, you might think, but it's kind of like a form of automation. That's completely separate to a more external form of automation, which might be something like when I'm browsing the internet and I'm using things like Puppeteer, Chrome, in order to browse to websites, more easily fill in forms, edit, things like this. That a Chrome MCP server that could be driven by AI, but could be just driven by a script, interacts with. And that's, once again, another conversation. Because sometimes that stuff can be very, very useful. Sometimes I don't need to read 800 pages of something. I just need the pure text, and whoever has provided it has not done it in a way that's very easy to interact with, etc. So, for example, for me, I use Chrome MCP and Claude a great deal. Even if I don't necessarily want to interact with the website, I just need bits of information. But how can I find it? It's drowning somewhere in this massive page. People push back against that because they don't want their content ripped, or they don't want their, and I completely understandable. There's just so much functionality out there, and it's so easy to just say, for example, to go back to the idea of I'm going to talk to somebody and not realize that they're a bot. Like maybe, social standards, social mark that this is a bot. And normally whenever I create like Twitch bots, for example, I just put like Shoseki and then bot in big capital letters. So it's very nice and clear that if you're interacting with this person, it has a particular reason. There are famous ones on Twitch that and not just Twitch, I mean Reddit as well. They have particular, use cases. If you post a link and you're not allowed to, is that a script? Is that a bot? Yeah. Anyway, but yes, that's generally most of what I have to say. So I've been talking for a while now.
See, I think a lot of that sounds great, and I mean, it sounds like to me it's much of what I was talking about, right? It's about assisting you with your ability to be able to create content or manage a community, right? And help in both ways that that automate things for the good, but also help with you to deal with situations where people might want to try and abuse things, right? I mean, there's always situations, right? And you've got a lot of things on your mind, and you're trying to deal with a lot of different things, and sometimes it can be hard, right? But if you have a bot there, and especially one that you can interact with in a natural way, right? Something you can talk to, it's it's effectively hands-free, right? So it becomes like something that yeah, you can continue to do whatever your tasks are without necessarily having to also keep a close eye or use another hand to be able to interact with something else, right? Whether it's typing or something else, right? But
Yeah,
yeah,
that interaction form itself is another form of AI. Use terms like machine learning, the Whisper APIs, in order to be able to capture a voice, turn it into a piece of text, and then process it in some way. That
yeah,
doesn't mean there's a consciousness there or any of that sort of stuff. It's literally
Cool.
just a fuzzy form of logic that if I talk to it, I get text, or like lots of things that in the past we would have just had to code very, with great amount of difficulty, is now being done by AI. That's one type of AI. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually there's any thoughts happening. You
yeah,
know, handwriting was the classic machine learning tutorial. It's very, very difficult to program by hand just using regular algorithms. I want to be able to trace my handwriting, and I want it to be able to differentiate between, 1 to 9 and 0. But machine
yes.
learning is great because it's fuzzy. Um,
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's a very valid point. I mean, this is something we talked about before this stage as well, is that um, a better term really to use to describe it is probably models rather than AI, right? Because we've built these models that can process data. That's probably a better way to describe modern AI right now, because that's kind of what it is, right? And I think, we were trying to figure out what's different about modern AI in terms of how you can, the base definition of it, how you can describe it, right? Is it software? Is it data? And the truth is it's really a combination, I guess, right? It's huge volumes of model weights, as they call them, uh, software layers to interact with those, and they can then take data as an input and process them through that existing model data as well, right? You get
yeah,
leveraging the software interface. So, I mean, when you think about it in that sense, that's data processing, right? That's what we're
yeah,
talking about.
which is the
And if
basis
we're
of
processing text, or if we're processing voice or audio or video or images, it's all just data processing, really. And that's
mm,
probably a better way to think of it. It might seem intelligent, and you could be forgiven for thinking that it was. And it's definitely interesting to experiment with it as if it is. But it's
those
not the
models.
kind of intelligence that we have.
Those models all have also very specific types of input and have very specific types of
Yeah.
output. They're not just completely interchangeable. I can't take the model like the Whisper APIs, the one from OpenAI. I can't take that and just switch it out with some other model and then put voice in and expect to get some text out. They're completely. I've always treated them basically as black box functions. I don't necessarily know how they work internally, but I know that
Yes.
it takes a certain shape, a certain amount of data, and this is roughly what I get out. And because I don't really understand how it's working internally, I maintain a healthy amount of skepticism to putting, some handrails around the outside to make sure it still passes through quality checks and things like this.
Yeah.
I have a question, guys. When you were
Yeah.
talking about the bots or agents, whatever, moving between worlds, uh, do they actually choose and move between the worlds themselves, and do they keep their memory or state when they do? Are you looking at like maybe persistent agents? Is that what you're thinking?
Well, honestly, that's entirely up to you. We're not building the AI part into AltSpace. All we're building there is an interface, a control interface. So if you have a session with an agent and you tell the agent to go from one world to another, then your memory settings for that session will be what define whether or not it can remember what happened in the previous versus the next. Now, as I say this, I have just shared uh, privately with Designer Girl a version of this new client that has this bot capability with a little blurb to be able to pass into your own AI to help it set it up for you so that it can access and control it. I'm not sure if it actually has the ability to go to a different world yet. So that's something that we'll need to add. But maybe we should also put in some of these safety measures and guardrails
Yeah,
in place as
definitely.
well, right? So that people can decide if they don't want bots to join. I mean, I
Yeah.
think Discord covers it pretty well in that you have to allow a bot, you have to grant access to it to give it access to your Discord server. And if we think of a group like a Discord server, channels like worlds, right? And then we've got the same kind of members and people, we've got the same kind of events, then we can probably shortcut the process and implement a lot of the same features and functionality. And what's really interesting is the way that Discord handles bots. They're treated much in the same way as users are, right? And that's kind of the base foundation that we've also started with this bot implementation, is that a bot kind of enters a world like a user and must follow the rules of that world like any other user, right? And could be banned from that world, even if that world does allow bots generally. You can take an individual approach to specific bots, or, obviously block them all if that's what you want. I see Barry's set up an event or a group for humans and animals. Uh, Maybe we need a filter so that you can also block animals, right? If you don't want animals to be able to enter your world. So I don't know what that constitutes. I did see a dog the other day that was really intently watching a video of another dog on someone's phone. I thought that was amazing. So maybe we need to be careful about what animals are going to start to do with technology as well. I don't know. But ultimately, yeah, I think we can probably find a nice balance here where people can feel safe that bots aren't going to raid their worlds and that bad actors aren't going to leverage this technology to ruin their ability to do what they want to do, but also allow people the power to experiment with them as well and control how they can be in their worlds, right? And I think the overlap there is probably going to come from how do we kind of let individual users have control over whether bots are visible or can engage with them as well, right? And I think that's probably going to be the hardest part, right? So if you have somebody who is adamant for their own reasons that they never ever want to interact with a bot on the platform, but a world or event host uses bots to help them moderate, then we can't really allow somebody to disable that moderation layer for themselves. Exactly. So we need to probably figure out that balance, and I think probably relying on world creators to make that decision is probably the right place to land there, because if you really don't want to interact with somebody's bot in their world, then you can just not attend their world, right? That's always your choice, right?
It
So
might
Or you
be.
could
It might,
disable them, yeah? Sorry, just a second.
Oh, sorry, go on.
I was just saying, if people had a definite button where they could disable them, so wouldn't see them if they didn't have it switched on. I can't remember if Horizon had one once. It's been too long ago since I went there, but I think that would be very important to some people. Some people be quite don't like the idea, quite freaked out, and other people would love the technology, want to explore more. So maybe control with the ability to see or not see them unless they were, say, in an event or something that's run by yourself. Does that sound like something that could be possible?
I mean, sure. I think it's hard to know where the priority is there, really, right? But I think the priority probably falls to world creators, right? I
Mm,
think if you create and put bots in your world and somebody enters your world, then you as a creator should probably decide whether that bot can see that person, whether that person can see that bot. And I think that
right.
that's probably the way that we should do it, really.
Okay.
That people having the ability to blanket ban every single bot on the platform creates other problems, right? Especially if your bots in your world are helping you moderate. Then if somebody wants to sidestep your moderation, all they have to do is tick that switch and say all bots are off. But so there's that balance there, really. So I think that allowing world creators or group, the management teams behind groups to be able to control whether bots are in their worlds or not. And honestly, that's just a question of, am I going to put bots in there, right? I get the choice to decide, am I even going to add a bot to my world? So I think that's going to be up to them to decide, and it'll be up to users to decide. If I definitely don't ever want to be interacting with bots, then I won't join that world, right? That's going to be it fundamentally. I think in reality, it's probably going to turn out to be a lot simpler than that, right? I don't think users necessarily don't join Discord servers because Carlbot is in there, right? I don't think users don't join Twitch streams because whatever the name of the popular bot that they use to do whatever it does is there, right? And I think the same will probably apply here. That if a bot is in a world, that bot could be a member of the world. It could be a moderator of the world. If it's a moderator, people probably can't suppress it. If it's not a moderator, then they can suppress it. That's probably how it's going to. That's how it's going to. And we can decide what importance level we assign to those bots as world creators, because we're the ones deciding to install those bots and what purpose they're for. So I think that makes the most sense. And what's great about that is that they actually fit really nicely in like users, right? Exactly like Discord does it. A bot appears in the members list on the server, and it can do everything that a user or a member can do. But we assign roles to the bot, and we decide, is the bot powerful in different ways. And then it's up to us to decide, is this a bot that's important, or is it just a member bot? And then it'll be up to individual groups or worlds or whatever events to decide, do bots enter, or is it only my bots? Is it no one else's? Are my bots mods, or are they normal? Are they there as supplementary to the experience, so you can block them if you want, and it won't break how things work? Or are they essential, and therefore you need them in order to be able to run things? Let's figure out how those things are going to work, and let's try and make sure that we don't necessarily break some of those use cases, and try and give people as much power as makes sense, and try and limit abuse as much as possible.
Can I make a couple of suggestions? There's the first one is that clearly categorization, where is this a bot that was created by and managed by, and doesn't have to be created by, but certainly pulled into the space by the person who's in space, compared to a bot that is roaming or connecting. Those are two separate things. So we're going to have separate discussions about those anyway. And the second one is, because a bot is essentially a form of automation, it once again, go back to websites. I could always have had bots on my own website, changing things, doing things, running as a daemon, like a process on the server. And you might have interacted with it without ever understanding or knowing that it was a bot. The fact that we have like chatbots and it's much more public now. Bots have always been part of the infrastructure, for example, of testing. We write test scripts, but ultimately these are bots, these are runners that run in the background and check, is the server still up? Is the space still up? How many people are running? I mean, people use tools on Twitch, which would blow your mind. They'll have entire transcripts of everything that was typed into chat during a 10-hour period. They record the video automatically. They back up the VODs automatically. Editors sometimes will, look through the stats of who was watching the video at any particular time and go, oh, something exciting must have happened 10 minutes in because it suddenly spiked. Oh, that's okay because we can trace through the events and we can see that your stream was raided by some big streamer. Therefore, that's why 10,000 people suddenly turned up. So maybe that's not actually an interesting thing that's happening. But yeah, people are using this automation, bots and things like this, an absolute ton in the background, separate for anything to do with VR or anything where you manually interact with a bot. It's just part of automation.
Yes.
Once again, a completely separate conversation than AI, because you can use AI with bots as well, and the potential of that is huge. You've seen those Skyrim mods where you can start. I watched a great video the other day. It was literally about a guy who'd installed AI bots into all of his NPCs in Skyrim, and then he set himself the task of trying to convince as many of them to question their reality. So he would go around and say, "Do you know that you're in a game? You're in a game of Skyrim?" And they would say, "No, we're not," because they'd follow their bot script. But it was still fuzzy in terms of their interaction because there was some AI there, and eventually he was able to break some of that. So obviously that's a risk. If you put a bunch of AI in your scene, the next thing you know, someone comes along and breaks the programming of the AI, that breaks the prompt, and before you know it, it's announcing cupcakes over the loudspeaker. Or anyway, yes, those are my two things.
I mean, yeah, I totally agree. Right? I mean, maybe there's a definition really here within Discord as to how they treat those, right? You could say that there's a bot and then there's a user bot, right? Now, in Discord's case, they don't allow user bots. I'll just point that out. They're against the terms of service. And user bots can kind of go in and out of servers whenever they want, basically. It's just as if it's another user. And then you've got bots, right, which are things that people explicitly install. They have certain functions. They come in by the management of the server or the group in our case, and they're there to do their job, and that's it. And they're very much accepted. But yeah,
plenty of other platforms.
I think.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Plenty of other platforms outright ban bots because of the negative association. So World of Warcraft, for example, has for decades struggled with bots because they completely take over a server. They farm all the resources. They drag down the price of the items in the shop or whatever it is that they're doing. They have a detrimental effect on the overall experience. But also, all those scripted events are a form of bots. Anixia's flying around and shooting stuff. I've always thought that it would be interesting in a game like World of Warcraft to have NPCs that were like active players, but it would be clear these are non-player characters. That's what NPC means. These are non-players. Yes. So if you could just distinguish that alone already. I mean, we might have this conversation in real life in a few years' time. I watched the show Android recently. In a few years' time, we might be having a conversation with somebody and not realizing, oh, this isn't a person. This is a service bot, and they're there just to, sell you peanuts. But once again, that idea of being open and upfront. But yes, they are all vectors of attack. Unfortunately, they're all things that people could potentially abuse. In real life, someone could just go, "Oh, fuck it, I'm gonna get 10,000 robots and just take up the stadium." And now, I'm the only person who's listening to this band that's super popular. But because I got in there first with my 10,000 bots, I bought all the tickets. Now Anyway, there's plenty of vectors of abuse, and obviously giving tools to people to be able to address that is the main thing.
Yeah, I think so, right? And do the best we can to do things right and to do right by our users. I think whether we implement a feature like this or not, people can still do it, right? People run bots in the context of games all the time. Illicit bots, aim bots, right? Those are the annoying ones that keep taking you out at spawn. Yeah, like you say, resource farming bots, all of that kind of stuff. Effectively, ways to use computers to automate cheating, right, in
Yep.
games. It's interesting because it's such a struggle as to how you deal with those. Even if you don't accommodate this kind of automation, if your game is available on computers, people can figure out ways to automate it, right? I know Activision recently took a very different approach to this, where they track down cheaters at their homes and serve them with court papers and have been recording the entire experience and then publishing it online, which has been very effective, surprisingly, right? So they're kind of taking this very blunt, very public-facing approach to how do they stop, certain communities from developing bots and stuff like that. That was a very recent story, and it centered around Call of Duty and specifically aim bots and other things which people create that can just disturb the balance of fairness within a game, especially a competitive game. It can really, really hurt people's ability to enjoy that, right? So,
What's strange in that particular case, I don't know the case of the legal stuff, but in terms of the software, is that you no longer have that clear demarcation between the player and the bot at that stage. The player might just be playing normally, but the bot is running in the background, enhancing, showing where the users are hidden behind walls, or automatically adjusting the gun towards the player that they're trying to target, etc. Which, once again, might give an unfair advantage or might ruin the experience for other people. So yeah, it's not even that there's necessarily a nice clear demarcation. I mean, we might want to ban or block bots, and then we just have users who are coming in who are using bots. At a certain point, am I becoming something of a bot
yes.
if every time someone asks me a question and I don't know the answer, and I used to Google it, but now I ask AI, I've just enhanced my interaction with you, hopefully accurately. But yeah, questionable.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's it. That's what it boils down to. And when it comes to the different strategies people use to try and deal with the problems that can become associated with this, it's interesting to see, right? Most game developers, resort to using kernel level anti-cheat systems, which are also incredibly unpopular with users because of the performance implications and the general shadiness of some of the companies that produce that kind of software. So I think it's interesting to see somebody like, I posted the link in the chat in case anybody wants to read it, but
Nice.
it's interesting to see how Activision and the Call of Duty team has taken a different approach to naming and shaming in effect, right? And trying to use that to deter. And it's worked. If you read that article, they succeeded in getting that individual to remove access to the mods that affected Call of Duty. So, yeah,
There are.
result, right?
It might be useful, for example, to outline some of the actual benefits sometimes. So, for example, there are entire YouTube channels whose purpose it is to help other YouTube creators to work, on getting their channel, getting their videos to a higher quality. And part of that feedback is the fact that YouTube videos are readily available directly from their own platform. Whereas a 3D world embedded on the server somewhere, only accessible through AltspaceVR, might not be very accessible. So a classic example of a bot that might be useful is to invite this bot in and say, right, you have a live camera, go shoot some footage, take some statistics on what the frame rate is, how accessible the space is, how easy it is to test, and then store it all, and I will process it offline because this is the service that I were offering. And then next thing you know, I can come back with a report and say, well, it was all great until I got up to the castle, and then my frame rates dropped to about 10 frames a second. I couldn't click on any of the NPCs because they didn't load in time, etc. So there's obviously going to be tons of potential options there. I mean, my go-to is, I don't know if you ever played a game called Majora's Mask for the N64, but they had a system, a time-based system, where, and then once again, this is not using any AI whatsoever, but you had NPCs who were going about their day, essentially. They were going about their day, they had their own ideas, they had their own routines that they were following. And as you went through a 3-day cycle, you could interact with them. And obviously, there's only a very finite amount of interaction available, but there were entire storylines, entire plot lines where, they crossed over with each other. And as you acted on the game, for example, if you turned up at a certain place at a certain time at night, you saw an old lady getting mugged and you could run in and save her. And obviously that happened automatically. There was no, there's no developer there making it happen in real time. It was just a time-based interaction. And obviously all of those are the sorts of things that get me excited when I think about AI-based NPCs. If you can give them routes, if you can give them minor variations, it ends up being a little bit like Westworld, which I guess, that was a warning, but it was also, while it was all functioning, was excellent because people really got to explore and interact, and it didn't have to be pre-programmed. Everyone, when you first enter into a game, you always get the same interactions. The stories and everything are set in, but as you play the game, because you love it over and over and over again, it starts to get stale. You start to feel like, oh, the NPC always does the same thing. It only has a finite set of dialogue options, etc. These are all the sorts of things that fuzzy logic that can provide far more value. I hate using that term, but you know what I mean. Anyway, I digress. I could ramble about this for ages.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting topic, and it presents a lot of opportunity and a lot of challenge, right? As most things that are interesting do. I've been just watching the chat as well and seeing what people are suggesting. I saw Grenadehead talking about being able to use bots to send them down his slides to be able to get some feedback on how good the slides and how the bot experienced it, which is an interesting way to think about things, I think. But really, you've touched on something there that I think is quite useful and quite important. I mean, I could tell you a story about how we approach QA in SideQuest in general. Sometimes certain problems are hard to narrow down. They only happen in certain circumstances, or they require, a volume of people to exist in order for the problem to occur. Or maybe it's not even a problem, right? Maybe you're just testing out the feature of a space or capacity. How things kind of evolve in the space as the capacity increases, as more people join, that kind of thing. And some of you at some point in the past may have joined into Worlds and found me and some of my team members testing things, what looked like loads of different versions of ourselves loading into the world at once, all of them talking and doing crazy things, right? And we're using bots to do that, right? We're doing scale testing and automated QA using bots. And I think that's so valuable, right? And it's not just valuable for us. If there's a mechanism by which Pony, who's creating a new world that has some game mechanic, if he can potentially load in a bunch of bots or NPCs, AI or not, be able to use that, leverage that to be able to test his world, then that's going to make it easier. I often, in the past, would ask the entire company to drop what they were doing and join us in a space to help us test out, new feature sets or help us narrow down a specific bug. And as I'm sure you can imagine, that's a very inefficient use of their time, especially if people are busy and working on other things and everybody has to drop everything that they're doing in order to help us test out something that requires more than 20 people to test. And honestly, that's how we approached things at a certain time. But we had to find a better way because it just didn't work. And being able to use bots to help with QA is enormously valuable. And it's something that we'll continue to use these new tools, these new systems to do exactly that as well.
And you'd be surprised, but I think a lot of games developers, I'm not in the games development industry, but my understanding is a lot of them don't do a lot of user testing. They develop the game, and then some of the problems that arise, I mean, the AAA games will, do extensive user testing. But even to have a preliminary step, just click on all the buttons, just go through the space and, just to be able to make sure that we're not wasting time. And obviously, when they do get users to test something, They're tracking everything about the user, where they were, what they were looking at, what did they click on, why do they keep dying on that spot? Well, that's because we put a sniper in that window, and then somehow that's so acute in terms of difficulty spike that that's not suitable. So we need to, AI won't replicate humans. That's not going to be suitable, but it can do mechanical things potentially. It can, come up with scenarios. Oh, I never would have thought about jumping and running off that weird, that angle there. But speedrunners do it all the time. They'll find a way to break the system. Regular user testers of different levels of competence and education, and how easy is this to understand? Do you need to have a degree level in order to play this game? Because we've made it so hard that it's impossible. We need to turn this down, I need to be able to do this playthrough, but I need you to switch the color scheme in a very specific way, so that people who have color blindness in this particular combo of colors can still play it. Like, that's such a specific set of conditions, that configurability of those bots suddenly becomes really important. And obviously, you can go and hire 100 people who have red, green, or there's lots and lots of different types of color blindness. But you can do that once you've already done the preliminary test. You don't need to waste their time with really basic stuff because you haven't tested it yet. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, it's God, it's. I honestly didn't really fully consider how extensive of a topic this is, and how many different facets there are to it. So I'm glad that we're talking about this in this kind of context as a community. I'll tell you what, let's hear from Stands with Trees. You joined quite a while ago, and we haven't heard from you yet. What are your thoughts on all these topics?
Well, I guess when it comes to AI, I'm sort of on the side of the fence where I enjoy. I use AI every day in work. I use AI every day when I'm doing my hobbies and my Unity projects, things like that. So I'm all for it. I look forward to seeing AI integration into AltSpace. I think that's going to be great. Now, when it comes to moderation, when you mentioned, people in the old days in AltSpace having problems moderating their events, well, first of all, they didn't talk to me. But because I would have been moderating that up the yin yang. But anyway, I'm not so sure when it comes to AI moderate. I don't think AI is at the point yet where it could use good enough judgment to basically allow it to just give it free reign and let it moderate. There needs to be, if we're going to do that, there needs to be human oversight and the ability for a human to override it in situations where they need to do that.
Yes.
Because yes, AI just doesn't have the same kind of judgment that a person would have. So,
Yeah.
But as you said, it will make things so much easier. And there are some basic things that you can let the AI do that will take that task away from you as the event host or whatever, and just make it so much easier to not have to worry about asking me to moderate, or anything like that, right? So, and of course, as I mentioned earlier, I would love to be able to put NPCs in my worlds that do indigenous dance, and be able to have that in my worlds. That would be so awesome. Other things, and I guess this is more bots and NPCs than it is AI, but have other things like that in there where you can, have. I think it would just enhance the experience so much more. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, that's basically what I had to say. I just really look forward to seeing how it's implemented in Altspace. It's going to be so exciting.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be interesting, and honestly, I think a lot of what you said there makes a lot of sense, right? You probably wouldn't give it the full reins out of the gate and be like, just go and figure it out yourself. But also at the same time, there's probably certain things that you can be very narrowly scoped about and say, look, if you because right here's an example, right? I remember back in the days of AltSpace, there was like maybe 2 months or so of a period, and I know some people in here will remember this time, right? Where there was certain disgruntled users. Maybe they'd been banned. Maybe they were just trolling, right? There was no reason behind it. It was just for the lulz, as they say. But they would come in, repeat it over and over again on new clients. They were using like virtual machines to get around, hardware level bans, stuff like that. And it would just blast audio to everybody in the space. And it was just nonstop N word, N word, N word, N word, right? You
Oh
could have an
gosh, I remember
automated
that.
bot.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, because it's interesting straight away. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? So you can potentially, right? So we have a thing in SideQuest. We have had a range of Discord communities, anything from what we are here, which is just a little over 1,300 users, right up to like 48,000 members. And sometimes, the laws of scale there, and statistically, the chances of things going wrong increase exponentially as you get bigger and bigger. And yeah, having a bot that can tell some of the behaviors of people who come in and try and ruin the experience for others, and having all of that handled automatically can really save you from having to endure that kind of stuff, right? So in the banter community, in the other communities that we've got, we have bots that will detect bad behavior and they delete messages before they even get posted to the channel. So us as a community never even need to know what's happening. Some people have got caught up with them, right? There's been false positives, and I think that's kind of what you're talking about
Well,
there
you know
is
what?
that they
Well, that
can
would be
have
a
that
great
problem,
thing.
right? Yeah.
That would be a really great thing, because one of the things I've noticed in my moderation career is that when things happen, it creates drama, and everybody wants to know what's going on. So if it could be nipped in the bud before anybody even knows what happened, that'd be so great.
That'd be nice, right? That'd be such a convenience to
Yeah.
anybody running or managing a community. But yeah, Technocrat has joined us. Technocrat is kind of, I think, an authority really in the community when it comes to AI and has a very deep understanding of some of the benefits of AI. Has also been involved in experimenting with interactions between humans and AIs on loads of different platforms. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, Technocrat, on this new feature that we've put in where you can integrate an MCP that's built into the client with your preferred agent interface.
Yeah, I mean, so far I like the stance of just like allowing world creators to kind of experiment, right, and have free experimentation. Because ultimately, this is going to be like a collective experiments as to what is the best like form factor for these like NPCs or machines to interface with us in this virtual world. One dimension that I think kind of is worth thinking about is that, as far as I can tell, like it's hard. Like there's a difference between like a platform, right? When you have a platform, there's always going to be some degree of platform bias, and that's when you can kind of really feel the flavor of like I guess pro human versus pro AI. It's like I guess it kind of comes down to like what types of experiences get recommended over other experiences, right? And in some ways, I do think having like almost like a human superiority in terms of like what value gets kind of like podcast, right? Like experiences that are more per human and human socialization should be like measurably like biased versus like pure AI experiences. Right?
It's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I guess you're right there. I mean, we kind of have to try and stay in an agnostic position as a platform as much as possible, right? I think right now, in terms of the evolution of AI, we are, there's a certain risk as we kind of move through these stages of transformation into a fully AI driven world, right? There's a certain amount people are kind of afraid of change and what that change is going to mean for them. And I think really for us, it's kind of the same, I guess, as crypto, right? It's a controversial topic that if you become intrinsically entangled with it, that the projects you're developing are heavily oriented around crypto, then you're going to have the risk that if some negative sentiment emerges around crypto or even just your entanglement with crypto, that could risk the project overall. And I think right now, our position as a platform should be to try and remain as agnostic as possible. And I definitely think, um, you know, not trying to limit bias in either direction is probably the best place for us as a platform, because it's not
Yeah,
it's
I
not
agree. I
really
think it's hard
essential.
to be completely free of like
Yeah,
any type of bias because the platform will have a
of course.
recommendation system as to which content it feeds, right? And the idea is like, okay, worlds that produce human to human interactions, right? Should it be more upweighted versus experiences where there's a lot of AI interactions amongst themselves? Like which experiences produces like better? What's like a more valuable experience, right? And what do you want to like encourage in the platform more? So
Yes. I mean, I think even if we keep our mechanisms and our means of weighting certain things over another, if we keep those completely standardized, even just the impression that we put out is going to potentially set the stage and the tone for the community, and that could end up reflected back in the form of user curation, right? So, that bias will creep in some senses, whether we like it or not. Um, I mean, I guess, yeah, I mean, honestly, probably avoiding the topic to some degree,
I mean,
right?
it
And
also
not
comes to like
holding
exploits,
a
right? Like
Discord
if you show a
stage about
world,
it.
like and how active a world is, people want to see like metrics. Okay, like is this world popular? Is there like activity in it? Um, do you like should that be like how do you want to display that and how do you want to rank, right? Because even like VR chat, right? From what I'm noticing, there is a lot of like algorithmic bias depending on whether users are idle or they're not, they're active and actively talking, and that kind of like
Interesting.
yeah.
Could we have a similar bias?
Yeah, like I mean, the balancing of this is going to be
Is
very,
that is
very.
that leaning more
Uh,
towards humans, right? Because it sounds like an anti-robot check kind of in a way, right? That it's detecting
well, it's what I
you're
guess in some
moving
ways like
like a
what
human would.
produces like the best. You know, what is exactly like an enjoyable VR experience, right? Is it ones where like does the delta, the value that you get when you have a human to human interaction, like long term, one would expect. It's part of the whole experiment. You know, like
Yeah.
it's like how.
How do we figure this out? No, I completely agree, and I think that's what we have to do, really, right? It's we have to uh, we have to tread carefully here and try to make sure um, that we don't inadvertently affect ourselves in some negative way, one way or the other, right? And yeah, I think the only way to do that is probably through experimentation, and then we can figure out how better to do it, right? And I think up until now, most platforms, in fact, all other platforms, right, have either outright like banned the topic or not accommodated it at the minimum, right? There's no direct integration or tools or anything like that that you can do. So it means the only way to achieve some of the things is to use the software in a way that it wasn't really intended. Find ways to automate and create those pipelines of communication between AI and the clients through some other means, right? So I guess just by providing that integration, we are probably already going further to try and create what I would hope is kind of a level playing field where people have the chance to try to experiment. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think like, are we going to have a point in future where we're going to measure bot attendance, and that's going to count towards a room in terms, or a group or a world in terms of its ranking? Are we going to have upvotes on the platform that are just for bots versus humans? I mean, I don't think we'll go that far. I don't think a bot is considered a person in the same respects, and we shouldn't really quantify it like that. And honestly, weighting, attendance or time spent generally in worlds against activity, that doesn't sound like a terrible idea, right? Even not necessarily dealing with bots and stuff like that, but people who are AFK, right? Basically trying to remove that vector of abuse in order, because this is something that we've seen quite a lot, right, in the history of side quests, is that people will find a way, every possible way they can, to manipulate the ranking and the curation that is supposed to be, a fair user-driven system. Other people will stack the cards in their favor and will abuse the system in order to give themselves more of a ranking, right? And it's a very difficult thing to try and deal with. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like keeping the door open and allowing for experimentation will help us to answer a lot of these questions later. The ones we can't answer now, anyway.
Yeah. I think it's going to be extremely fun and interesting. Looking forward.
I was going to
Let's see,
suggest.
Rich. Oh, go ahead,
sorry.
Shoseki.
I was going to say, I think you actually brought up something really valid there, and to go to Mr. Steve's point in the chat, like, people value different things, and if they don't value what it is that you're doing, advertisers are not going to care. Oh, we got 10,000 bots into our space today. Nobody cares. And if the users come in and say, yeah, you've used AI to create all this stuff, but it's garbage. It doesn't represent any real thought or soul or whatever it is. And I'm using very abstract, terms there, but it has to have value. And people, if there is a backlash to AI, and then they decide, well, actually, I don't want to bother interacting with it, that's fine. That's fine. It's entirely up to the space creators to decide. I don't want your garbage. I filled my house with garbage. Come and see my garbage. And then there's like, well, actually, it smells in here. I don't really want to hang out in here. And vice versa. If someone decides to hand create everything, that's nowadays that's highly valuable. People like IPAs and handcrafted, artisan furniture and all sorts of stuff. People appreciate the human in the creative thing. So I've never been a massive promoter of AI as a form of content necessarily. I mean, I saw an AI slop, a video generator TV show today that's just 24/7 streamed video. It just never stops. And after about 30 seconds, you're done. Like 30 seconds of cats eating fake hamburgers and etc. The novelty's gone, and then you just don't care about any of this because none of it matters. You're just watching something that doesn't matter. There was no human in the loop. I mean, there are people in the chat who are in this particular stream, who are generating stuff, ideas, but come on, we need, we expect higher quality. We have higher expectations. But anyway, yeah.
I think that's a very interesting point, right? Is that how we assign value to stuff, right? If you can create stuff quicker and easier, let's just take AI out of the equation, right? Because I actually think that in, let's say, the gaming industry, that there's a huge aversion to AI generated games, right? Generally by users. That this could be the kiss of death for certain games if they try and conceal the fact that they've used AI generated artwork in the final product, right? It can be really, really problematic. And people, a very vocal minority can absolutely devastate your ability to see success with a game in that case. But I actually think that it doesn't have a lot to do with the AI, and I think it's more about what you just touched on, which is the value that gets assigned with that content. And I'm talking about actual value, like price. And this is something that's been a problem for consumers and gamers before AI was a thing, right? Before it was AI slop, it was asset flips, right? Where it's basically low effort, right? People feel like they're being manipulated because a very small amount of effort, relatively, went into creating something that you're then trying to charge a lot of money for, right? Which is a grift. It's a scam in a sense, right? It's a system designed to just make as much money from people as possible, and then that's it. And I think we've seen that on SideQuest. We've seen people come and release huge numbers of apps, and they're very low quality and they're buggy and broken or whatever, right? But they're trying to play on very popular topics, or they're fan-made games of existing IP, that kind of thing. And we've had to act. In some cases, we've had to explicitly ban and remove hordes of content from the platform because it's very clear somebody is just trying to manipulate others. We're not alone, right? I know that other platforms have done the same thing. Steam have removed hordes of content. Sony have removed hordes of content from PlayStation in the past from people who just try and make as much money by, playing a numbers game than anything else, and produce a lot of slop in the process, right? And I think that's why gamers are concerned with it, is because they want to be able to see that value. And it's actually an interesting aspect. Is like, if you put in very little value and produce something that, you know, the average person might not be able to tell the difference, then I think that's why, a lot of people feel justified in rising up against that and opposing that, right? But it's actually less about the AI, it's more about the slop part of it in that conversation. And they want to be able to know that a lot of time and effort has been put into creating something. And I think
Well, they respect the
that's
artist.
important. That's the
Like the
value.
art, yeah, the artist has a vision, and maybe lots of artists work together. A film has got producers and writers and directors, actors, and all the people adding layers of interpretation. And sometimes it's garbage. Sometimes it comes together really beautifully.
Yes.
And then what do you get with AI? You get something very generic potentially, and then at a certain
Yeah.
point, I mean, this is already happening in YouTube. You just have
Yeah.
channels that are
And
just
it happens
generating.
everywhere.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
And
mean,
then just every
literally
platform fills with the garbage.
every form of product eventually reaches the enshittification stage, right?
Yeah,
Every form of everything becomes more driven by maximizing profits over
yeah.
trying to create something interesting, right? And to Barry's point, most of what we see is stop. That's true. As time progresses, everything is just rehashed. It's all just a means to an end, and the end is, how can we make as much money from people as possible? And minimizing effort is another way to make money. And I think people are generally, sensitive to that, especially if you've been around for a little longer and you can actually see that firsthand, see how things have kind of evolved, right? It's shrinkflation. It's, call it whatever you want. There's many different names to describe the same thing, and it's that there's an increasing greediness, let's say, that you can attribute to wanting to maximize your revenue and your profit from people. And I think like, let's take the inverse of that. Like, let's say somebody takes the tools and doesn't do a low effort thing, actually spends a lot of time integrating those tools into their workflows and pipelines to create something that's amazing. I mean, in that case, they probably shouldn't be painted with the same brush, right? They shouldn't be considered to be slop, because it's not slop. And I think
it's true, but it's difficult to differentiate, isn't it? Like if
it
someone
is.
comes
It's
to you and
difficult to
says,
quantify.
"I've painted this unbelievable thing," but we're 50 years down the line, and because of an accident, they have a replaced arm, and it's a robotic arm. People are then going to say, did you paint that because you're an incredible artist, or is that because of your robotic arm? And they're never going to get past that. There's going to be a real problem, frustration for that person, and they just say, "Look, I've had a wooden attachment with literally just a brush at the end of it, just to guarantee that it's not, an AI-driven arm. I painted all of this myself, but the burden of proof then ends up on the person, which is not fair on them." But you're going to have, that thing with the profit thing. You're just going to have this massive cash grab of tons of slop artists, and it's already been happening for the last few years. The novelty will wear off because everyone will go, "Oh, okay, this is very samey." These models were trained at a particular time in our culture, and so now, I mean, there's a whole conversation there, isn't it, about how it feeds back into itself, and the internet just becomes full of slop that you can't understand or trust any of it. It's all You can't really trust anything on the internet. Why? Because the page it references, the Wikipedia have taken a very strong stance. They're not accepting AI stuff, but Wikipedia is not immune to it, because I can fire up my MCP server, connect on Chrome, connect to Wikipedia, log in, and then just get Claude to write my articles and update things. And there's literally, and unless they have some way of fingerprinting, which is coming in, by the way. They are talking about potentially being able to fingerprint things. How are they going to distinguish?
Very easy to work around, of course.
Yeah, and the thing is that those bots now are in the background. I mean, I've had Git pulls, pull requests on old projects that I don't care about anymore, and I look, it's clearly an AI-based bot, because they're trying to farm credits on projects of mine. That's going to happen on every single platform. Yeah, I'm no longer.
Listen,
I don't know. I'm not arguing
let's,
anymore. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Carlos mentioned in the chat there that we were getting up to 2 hours. We're now 10 minutes over. Maybe we'll just take a moment to say goodbye to anybody who's watching on YouTube, and we can close out that stream. And then I'd love to hear from Rich, who joined a little while ago and hasn't said anything yet. So,
Okay.
go ahead.
Sorry about that.
Give us your 2 cents.
Hey, nice to meet you, Shane. I also want to say thank you for bringing Altspace back. I feel like AI is the future. I use AI every day, every single day. I use AI. I'm currently a day trader and I trade the futures market, and I use AI to help me analyze my charts. And on where is the right spot to get in at, where's the right spot to take profit, and it's been helping me ever since I started using it with my trading. And I also currently have a couple of different projects that me and a friend of mine, Karen, she's in this chat, we working on right now to build. We have an AI build us a cue board to put in one of my VR chat worlds. So yeah, and I also have a project I'm working on for my son. Him and a friend of his started up a auto detailing mobile detailing business, and I'm using AI to create like the flyers and the videos and stuff like that. So AI is really helping me a lot. So I know, it's definitely the future, and it's gonna be big. Like a lot of people's gonna be using it like the whole world's gonna be using AI. So I'm so excited that you want to implement it in Altspace platform. I just want to come up here and say that. Also, before I go, the guy that was just up here, Stand with Trees, he's a great moderator. He moderates. I'm sorry, I said moderates. He moderates some of my events. I'm sorry. He moderates some of my events in
You're doing
VR
great.
chat. Oh, thank you. And he's a great moderator. So if you are looking for more moderators, Shane, he's the one.
I appreciate
All
that.
right,
Thank you.
you. Thank you. You have a blessed day.
You too. Cheers, Rich. Great to hear from you. Yeah, I've tried to pull up some people who are some people who are active in the chat and some who aren't active in the chat, right? So let's hear from Mystery Steve. You want to give us your 2 cents?
Yeah. And by the way, thank you so much for giving me some time here. I really appreciate that. You guys are putting in a lot of awesome work here. And it's very noble, getting together the community from back when and everything. I just, yeah, I want to apologize that I basically came in storming into chat. I don't normally like to do that. But basically yeah, in terms of just social VR platforms in general, really any platform, but especially social VR where it's especially immersive, and where people come with a certain expectation of more standards that resemble IRL a little bit more, which is we came to Altspace for a small town feel back in the day, or some degree of it. Yeah, just I myself as well as many other folks I've tried to invite into various places. One of their biggest concerns as a new person who either hasn't made very many things and wants to try it, or is very experienced and wants to experiment with a new place, generative AI, and specifically predominantly AI images or AI contributed models, like things where you'd put it together yourself, where it's not just text. Code is a different thing. I can't really speak on that. I'm not a coder, but it was one of their biggest deterrents. And it's because for me personally, and I mentioned this in the chat, I remember back in Altspace, especially in around 2017 to 18, and I'll try not to go too long on this, but I know a handful of them were put together by actual admins with degrees in in graphic design, but I also know that there are ones who weren't, and I don't have a degree in graphic design. I made some basic ones that looked pretty cool and attracted dozens of people into the room for talk shows and whatever, where it was some rectangles of a certain color overlaid on another color that matched it okay, just from my basic just understanding of what I like looking at. Then I put some text over it, maybe a slanting effect. All of this you can find in very basic tools, and as long as you put some nice aesthetic on it, you workshop it around, and you look at stuff on the internet that might inspire you, and it's basically putting together stuff with cardboard that can still very much impress people. Maybe it's a little more minimalistic. Doesn't look like a Drew Struzan painting, maybe, but but it still gets people, and sometimes a lot more than a technically prettier looking generative AI one. And on top of that, and this is so I don't linger on too long, on top of that, it also encourages the, hey, you just you from any level of experience can try making something, an event, a world, whatever, with our tools. And even if all you can manage to put together is these basic things, your effort and just the effort you put into it is going to be put here. We're going to celebrate it as a community and as a platform. And the part that will be unambiguously rewarded is the fact that you put effort into it, not that something took it farther than you could have. And so before, just to a last thing, I know that some especially it's a difficult economic and political climate where increasingly people have less free time for things like this, and so obviously we can't account for that, or we have to account for that, I mean, but that's not something you can really fix all the time. So generative AI, if you literally don't have 5 minutes in your day to put this together, but you did for the event, that's another ball game. But if you have 5 minutes, you could put together something that looks pretty cool, and you don't need generative AI for it. And I've seen platforms, I've seen places that's such a good feel that I know it feels sometimes icky to go, hey, we just don't at all want generative AI here. But some of the best community as I've found from that being on the rule set of we don't want generative AI here. That's my fantasy, but obviously this platform doesn't have to do that. But I'm saying that's, in my opinion, the best case scenario, just for me. Yeah, I'm done. Thank you.
Gotcha. I appreciate that. Cheers for your input. It's definitely good to have, I think, a nice, very diverse, uh, you know, um, viewpoint on things, right? For us to all kind of be able to come together and share this understanding. And I think the thing that seems to come back time and time again is assessing the value and making sure that people actually put time and effort into what they're creating if they're going to expect other people to also appreciate that same value. There's no way to kind of cheat that, I think, in essence, right? And I think that that's actually quite interesting. One thing I will say, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Steve, maybe before we move on to somebody else, but what do you think about the fact that most of these tools now, like Photoshop, for instance, have heavily integrated AI and are kind of shoving that into people's faces? What do you think of the fact that people can't really make that choice anymore because the tools are trying to encourage them to use AI?
It's a great question. And it's something that I'll be honest, has frustrated me. So I'm a big Clip Studio Paint user. I do a lot of cartoon work. And I think back in the day, they did peel this back from user backlash, if I remember correctly, because this was like earlier in AI. But they used it as some generative AI tools. The people who didn't want it, which turned out to be the majority of their user base, didn't use it. So if they even still kept it around today, you don't have to use, like, what's included in the program is more about what the company decided than anything to do with the actual program, unless they actively put prompts and pushes it in your face all throughout you trying to use the tools that were already there. How you use the tool, how you use the software that directly translates your effort is representative of your specific effort and not just it generating interpretively off of you. That speaks much more to what the tool is for. So like if they tack it on, like if you put, I don't know, let's say you have a perfectly good product that someone artisanally put together, something that had some tender love and care. I don't know, a blender, let's say. It's funny we're talking about blender, but like a nice blender, make some juices, it lasts a while, can be repaired, doesn't have to be replaced very often. And then on the packaging, they put a Coca-Cola logo, and you don't like Coca-Cola. Now, you don't need to interact with it. You don't need to drink it. You still have the blender, and you can use the blender without any effect on Coca-Cola. Now, it's reasonable for you to say, oh, well, they are now in business with Coca-Cola, and I really don't like Coca-Cola, so I'm going to choose not to support that. And I would encourage you in that if that's something you believe in. With AI, I would encourage people to stop using stuff. I've seen countless artists stop using Photoshop because of their kissing up to AI. And they go up to Clip Studio Paint, who peeled it back. They go up to Krita, who never used it. And yeah, so it's like you can't avoid it being there all the time because corporations decide that, or groups that are prioritizing that idea. But it doesn't need to change the better part of what that software already was. And if it does, if it gets in your way, great reason to stop using it. Yeah.
Gotcha. No, that's very interesting. I mean, as a follow-up to that, and just because, I mean, I think we've had more opinions from people here on the stage today who are, who appreciate AI more. I'd love to hear your thoughts on like the evolution of digital art overall, right? I remember late 90s, early noughties when Corel Draw and eventually Photoshop and stuff like that were really gathering steam. There was a lot of people who were against the idea of using digital tools at all to create art. And at the time, they kind of, yeah, they felt that using Photoshop meant that it wasn't real art. It's kind of interesting to see now, 2 decades later, how people have they've kind of adopted those digital tools, and now they believe that that is just as much art creation as anything else. I mean, do you think, given enough time, that people might change their opinion towards AI generative tools in the same way that now we use filters and other things within Photoshop to be able to achieve certain effects that we want to try and achieve.
Do you mind if I weigh on that specific part? I don't remember if you said you wanted to move on to somebody else. Can I weigh
I
on
wanted to ask
that?
you that question before we move on to someone. Yeah, go ahead. That was
Okay.
specifically at you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, because I've heard this a hell of a lot, and it's a really good point. So the difference between the evolution to digital is in most of the digital tools I've ever seen, including ones that I've worked with extensively, and the ones that a lot of you have worked with, that basically it's digital tools, whether it's coding, whether it's graphic art, whether it's 3D modeling, whatever it is until AI is still a direct translation of something that you just couldn't have done as quickly. So basically, it's like you click here is the start of a line, click here is the end of that line. Let's say if you're not using a stylus. And then you tell it, hey, can you put this at this equation exactly as I'm putting that equation in this arrangement? So let's say the exact arrangement needed to form an octagon. Let's say you're doing a stop sign and you want to do it a specific way. And so it's a one-to-one, hey, I couldn't do this by myself, but it's just saying the same thing that I am directly saying 1,000 times, and with a brushstroke, when I'm using my stylus, it's like the literal movement my hand made with whatever settings I have to where I told it to wobble this much, like I told it not to wobble. I told it to hold back from certain movements. I put in all these dials and settings so that it's literally the exact decisions I made put into that brushstroke, just again, much faster than a human could, or replicating something that a human can't do by itself, like the graphite of a pencil. You're not going to do that with your body, and that's a physical tool. But with generative AI, with any of the images you've seen, where all the wisps of hair are on the person's face, where their eyes are positioned, why you chose their eyes to look that way. You can get as great. I mean, even if you're not consciously thinking about it, the fact of like what even their pupils look like, their irises, how far apart the little lines that make up the colors in the pupil, how big the black circle on the inside of the pupil is. You can go to any thousands and thousands of part of any particular image to see this. You don't need to directly think about it all the time, but AI is making incredible amounts of these decisions for the person. And it's not taking the place as much of a tool in the sense of you're using this thing that isn't human to repeat yourself 1,000 times. It's taking the place of a person that you're acting as a creative director for. So you're saying, hey, I would like this thing. Here's like, I don't know, make my friend Angela look like a Pixar character. And you can go up to an artist and they would interpret that, and you would have a back and forth until it looks how you want it. And that person would, depending on the budget of the project, whether it's a passion thing or a corporate thing or whatever, they'd either get credit or payment, or ideally both, and like then they would be treated as another whole person. That is if the AI is interpreting anything more than what you literally directly decided on some level, any interpretation, anything where it's like, oh, I think this is what you meant by that, rather than this is literally what you told me to do, then yeah, it's taking the place of a human. And like it's taking the place of a human that would have been in a collaborative effort. And we want to encourage people taking those spots. Use digital tools, but this is not just a tool. It is a jump in that evolution that is bigger and broader, and in my personal opinion, more disingenuous to call a tool than any of the other exponential evolutions in technology before. They were all to repeat your same input or translate it. These are to interpret, and interpretation is the job of a sentient being, or a living being if you're getting your cat to do it, for instance. Yeah.
It's interesting. What if would there be a scenario in the world where if the tools gave you more power, more control over every minutiae, every single tiny little detail, does that mean that, like, if you spend like the same amount of time you would on creating the art with today's tools, but you invested that into describing everything as perfectly as possible so that every single part of what you're producing is completely under your own human control, does that change things then for you? Because definitely something that I've noticed is that, one of the
Yeah.
biggest problems with AI and people trying to use it professionally is how much it takes its own liberties and how much it hallucinates what it wants to fill in the gaps with. And I think that what I've seen is that there's a trend in certain tools, like especially with video generation, that the ones that are becoming better now are the ones that are actually relinquishing more and more of that control and allowing people to get very specific with it and be able to, yeah, to be able to control everything down to a minutiae. For instance, yeah, there's been a lot of activity recently in video generation. Lots of new stuff has been released in that field, and I think one of the more interesting ones, and I've been talking about this with Aline and with other people, right? Because honestly, we've experimented with AI video generation and tried to use it for some things, and it hasn't been capable. We've had to just throw it all out and then do our own stuff. We literally had to set it all up and render it out in Blender ourselves rather than use AI tools to generate those videos. And the reason is because we couldn't get enough control. We wanted things to be very specific, and we were trying, and we spent a lot of time and money with AI tools to get it to be right, and it couldn't do it. So we abandoned it as a tool. But the newest tools, like there's a new video model called Seed Dance 2.5, and for the first time, it has this enormous capability to take way more input than any other tool before it, which gives you back that creative director position in terms of you being able to do that. So I guess what I'm wondering is, if tools started to trend in that direction where the tools themselves encourage you to take the reins more and actually have full control over every single minutiae of their output, would that change your outlook on those tools? Or would you still feel that something about the origin of the tools, or the ability for them to potentially make those decisions, would mean that they're still bad?
The natural evolution of that idea is you're coming back to the concept of just making a really competent digital art tool. I mean, like, in terms of the generative AI, so in terms of the, like, when you say the video creation tools, if you're talking about something that's supposed to resemble live action specifically, then that is where it gets a little more muddy in terms of like, but the part of the theory where it's like interpreting as little as possible and giving you as much direct control as possible is just, in my mind, it's quite literally, very simply, the process of just you're winding down back to where we were, but just with the modern sensibilities of what we learned that we want. So it's like, you're removing the reason that AI was put there to generate things on top of that you couldn't at the time or didn't want to translate yourself. And so if you're taking out those parts and it's just making what you translate, then you've made a digital art tool standard as before, but with modern sensibilities, which is frankly where we would have been with a tool like a Photoshop or an equivalent tool without AI ever having come into it. It's just we now know, like, philosophically speaking, there's a value to, like, oh, we found out what it is, the thing that we didn't have that we want because we saw some of these things interpreted by AI, but that's also less likely because, like, the data sets that it's pooling from is already existing things. So it's like maybe it pulled from something obscure you didn't know about. And so on a personal level, you found something you wouldn't individually have thought about that you wanted, and that's got something to it. I used to use AI for reference images. Nothing in the end result. But for that reason, I used to use it for reference images. Now, for environmental reasons, I don't. But yeah, it's just like, yeah, you're just trimming off the generative aspect of it and making a direct tool. And frankly, that's a great example of that is what Shane's editor exactly was. Just putting shapes together creatively to where people forget it's just shapes because you have an idea, even if it's a basic one, blocks to set up a set and a world, images that people uploaded of stuff that they were having fun with, and new images were going to be created every day by people or taken by people of the environment around them. And AI just brings that closer to a place that is to look like somebody else when you could have just built up some basic skills that would have represented the small place that you're coming from, which is something to be incredibly proud of and something that people like seeing, and it attracts them to places when it's done well, even if it's done with not very much experience. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, it's interesting. I'd definitely like to hear from somebody else, but just to sort of round that point out, I think what could be different from that as a tool, is that there's always a percentage of the effort that goes to the technical burden of understanding what it is that you're trying to do, right? And I guess what a tool like that could do would potentially eliminate that technical burden. So rather than having to learn the nuances of how to use like Photoshop, where all the different parts are, how to figure out how to use Blender and all of the complicated UI and procedures and workflows that are in there, that we could then approach it from a much more organic position, right, where we can just simply describe in a level of detail what we want, and it can produce it. It's almost like being able to take some of this existing software and enabling like voice control on it, right, so that you can simply tell it what you want it to do, and the software will translate your voice commands into actions without you having to figure out about that. Why don't I put Aline on the spot and get your thoughts on some of what we're talking about?
I mean, in my opinion, the tool is only as good as the person using it. And in my experience, this goes through everything. It doesn't matter if you really just doing pixel art, pixel by pixel, or if you're using generative AI. At the end, it completely depends how you use it, what you do with it, and yeah, do you understand how it's working? Do you understand how you can actually achieve the things you want to do? Do you know where are the limits, where are the restrictions if you use something that only runs in the cloud? And yeah, pretty much it's always, yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about this. It's quite simple.
Yeah, I think so. I think, and I pretty much agree with that. I think that slop is slop, regardless of how you produce it. And collectively, as as humans, we could probably do better to be able to identify that, so that we can just naturally, curate that and be able to wade through that. But the thing is that, yeah, maybe the tools aren't necessarily what produce the slop either. Maybe it's the human making the decision to not actually put their time and effort into something, right? And maybe the tools could be, maybe it doesn't matter really what tools you're using, whether you're using doing stuff by hand, using a range of digital tools, or using the most modern generative AI. At the end of the day, it's the people who put the extra effort in to make that perfect, without just relying on some random output. Those are the ones that we should rally behind and that we should support. And maybe that's a better way to look at this, rather than AI replacing humans, or rather than AI tools being the bad people here. Because ultimately, right, an AI model isn't going to generate anything unless you ask it to do something. Well, I'll tell you what, we're 2.5 hours in. I'm going to very soon, ask us all to jump over to one of the voice channels for maybe a little bit of an after party. But before I do, I maybe want to just give Kitty and Vanquisher a bit of time to throw in their thoughts on the topic today, but also to talk about their respective Discord stage events, which will be kicking off starting from next week, next Saturday. So, Kitty, you want to take it away first?
Sure. In regards to AI, obviously I'm fine with AI. I don't think it's anyone's place to tell people how to use or not use it. I'll compare it to religion. What you do is your business. I don't want you to bring it into my house. That's just how I see it. You do you, I'll do me. And we just respect each other.
Great view. That's a great view.
And
Yeah, definitely we can do well to remember that a bit better.
And then just in terms of the events, we do have the weekly host one starting next Saturday at 3 p.m. Next Saturday is also going to be the celebration of AltSpace's return as a sleepover. We were actually already planning to do a sleepover and thought it was a nice way to tie this in and hopefully bring some people over who maybe haven't spent time in virtual reality for a while to come hang out with us and just kind of celebrate. The first thing we're going to do is a mingle and chill that'll be just about reminiscing and sharing memories and talking about AltSpace, stuff like that. There's a whole bunch of stuff planned over the evening. Kalima's got some AltSpace trivia that's going to be happening. We've got Dutch and Dan running a masquerade ball, which is always fun. We'll be doing a little 1 hour short late show, VR late show as well, and then playing games and just having a lot of fun generally. So if anybody needs help getting set up so that they can log into Banter if they're having issues, feel free to DM me. I have it set so as long as we have the server in common, you can reach me. So if you need help, feel free to send myself or even Static Threat or Vanquisher a message, whoever you're comfortable with, and we'll give you a hand to make sure you can participate if that's what you want to do.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. And then maybe Vanquisher, you can bring us home, talk to us about your new video to help people getting started with creating worlds and your new SDK meetup event starting next Saturday.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, but I would also like to answer stuff in regards to AI as well. So for me, it is just a tool. So if you could utilize it to help you achieve stuff quicker, faster, easier, go for it. So I'll give you an example. So like the video that I created, I was gonna try to manually create a thumbnail, like a really catchy one. I could have gone to Photoshop, spent about like half an hour, 45 minutes putting stuff together. But instead of doing that, I took the core elements that I imagined in my head, and I just gave it to the AI, and I gave some very specific instructions, gave it all the graphics element that I already have, and in like 5 seconds, it made like exactly what I imagined, if not better. So yeah, so you use AI as a tool to make your life easier, make your work easier, faster. That's all I have to say about AI for now. And for the event, I think it would be a really good platform that we could all gather up. And for the first one, I think we'll just kind of share ideas to see what we all want to get out from it, learn from it. And I think in the future, we could even use it as a platform to share knowledge. Everyone could share the screen. Share what you have learned in Unity or any stuff with Blender, or even AI tools. If you have any cool AI tools that could help us creators, feel free to share those as well. So we're looking forward for next week, our first SDK meetup, and we'll just all learn together, grow together, because we're all learning all the time, and sharing knowledge is the best way to learn.
Awesome. That's great. Well, look, let's call that then another successful week. We had, I think, about 67 people here at the highest, which is fantastic. Aline, I just noticed you unmuted. Have you got anything else you wanted to say at the end?
What? No, I did not realize. Sorry.
Oh, fair enough. Sorry, didn't mean to call you out. Okay, well, look, I'm going to jump over to the collab/dev voice chat. So I'd love to invite you all to join me over there, and we can continue to catch up and have a bit more relaxed, interactions. So thank you all for coming. We'll see you again this time next week. I'll figure out what the topic is going to be for next week's event in the meantime. And yeah, just one last plug for Vanquisher and Kitty's event. Please check out the event section on Discord and click to register your interest. And yeah, come and support those guys in helping to share the love when it comes to how to create events and how to create worlds. And I'll see you over there in the collab and dev chat.